Battlestar Galactica, the 2004 reboot series, is literally the best science fiction series ever brought to television. Today, I'm going to make my case. Watch this video, then try to prove me wrong. Hi, I'm Jim, the father of Fantasy for the Ages, the show where I and my son Zach get together and talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Today, a Just Jim episode. Zach's off doing other things, but I'm here with you to make my case for this exceptional, best ever science fiction on television. Here's my case. In 2023, I took the time to rewatch this exceptional science fiction series that originally ran from 2004 to 2008. I had to purchase it, as right now it wasn't streamable for free. I mean, not that anything is streamable for free, but on all the different services that I do have subscription to, none of them were offering Battlestar Galactica just as part of the package. So I bought these, worth every dime. Mind you, I watched the original Battlestar Galactica live on television each week as a kid. I thought it was amazing. And for TV at that time, it was. But boy, does that show not hold up. I tried watching a few episodes again a couple of years ago. Even I had to cringe. But here we are now, nearly 20 years after the reboot got going, which I did watch week after week as it came out on TV back there in the aughts. And wow, now this show still feels as fresh and relevant as was it when it first came out. Not only that, the special effects are still spectacular, and they allow you to completely immerse yourself in the suspension of disbelief and just enjoy the show. I also actually appreciated the nods to the original series speckled throughout this reboot, from things like the original Cylon Centurions being used in numerous ways, to the casting of Richard Hatch in the prominent supporting role of Tom Zarek, which he performed brilliantly, by the way. But Hatch had played the starring role of Captain Apollo Adama in the original. I mean, he was great in that show. His fame kind of went to his head a little bit at that time. That's a whole nother story, and you can Google it if you want to know. But I loved seeing him again. Honestly, it was the only other time I remembered seeing him. The rest of this episode now will include spoilers. So if you haven't watched Battlestar Galactica, the 2004 version, I strongly recommend you go do so first. And really, I would recommend you watch this show. It's amazing. So at the point that you have watched and now fully understand where I'm coming from about how incredible the show is, try to remember to come back and watch this video. My claim that this Battlestar Galactica reboot is the best science fiction ever brought to TV is based on a number of factors. I'm not just fanboying here. First, the writing is spectacular. Science fiction at a truly adult level with gritty characters performed with excellence. The plot is unpredictable, full of tension, mystery, and intrigue, and the stakes are realistically high. The actors take on sci-fi content with absolute seriousness. This show is partly about war, partly about the flight for survival, and they lean into both the military aspects of a space fleet under such tense circumstances, as well as the complications of a democratic government trying to function in such a setting, with the ragtag survivors in all these spaceships that the military are now trying to protect, who aren't in the military and don't want to be military. The needs of the civilians and the just expectations for survival that the military has, these things do not align. And it causes many, many plot points throughout the series that really make sense. I felt that gave a really realistic conflict to the story. It also allowed them to tell many analogies and metaphors about modern day. And they did that really well. The show also gave us characters who could be in an intense situation day after day, but also know then that they have to have some fun. They have to find ways to blow off steam. That's how soldiers are. No one can stay serious hour after hour, day after day, when there is no end necessarily in sight. So, from playing cards to drinking hard to fracking, they found ways to vent and be real people, even if some of them were actually Cylons. One more element of the story that demonstrates its exceptional qualities is the repeated theme of faith, the belief in something more beyond just what we see in life, and the decision to make that a very real aspect of the story. And wisely, they don't try to explain everything away. It turns out to be better by leaving it not fully understood, these faith aspects. That's what faith is: the belief in something you can't fully grasp, explain, or know as fact. So that was a brilliant part of this story. And that's another reason, by the way, this show is exceptional. It took the basic premise of the original Battlestar Galactica and turned up the stakes to 11 and the suspense. And they partly did this by having the lead Cylons, the bad guys, now appear human. But not in some hokey synthetic rubber over a metal skeleton a la the Terminator. These Cylons bleed. They feel. They are machines. They have programming, but they also breathe and eat and are very extremely human. Even they eventually procreate. But that's a spoiler. And the fact that some of these Cylons are actually sleeper agents amongst the human fleet, not even realizing they're Cylons, that was an amazing bit of show development and writing. I guess I'm saying that this is science fiction that is written, directed, and produced with excellence. It takes itself 100% seriously, with a meaningful story to tell, even when set in a fantastical science fiction setting. And it succeeds. It was critically acclaimed, it had strong viewership, and won a whole bunch of awards. It was nominated for even more. And some of those awards were Emmys. Is it a perfect show? Well, that depends on what you're looking for. Most people will agree that the storyline got weaker over the course of parts of season 3 and especially season 4. But I still enjoyed it, and I found a lot to value all the way through. And I still come back to my claim that it is the best science fiction series that has ever had a full TV run, in that it brought an approach to the screen that we'd not seen yet. And honestly, that hasn't yet been replicated in sci-fi. We got something for fantasy 3 years after this show was over that has some parallels. Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones perhaps owes a debt to Battlestar Galactica, showing that we could go down and dirty with drama and real grit in something fantastical and still be commercially successful. You didn't have to go hokey because it's science fiction and fantasy. And again, Game of Thrones follows that mold. To further make my case, to kind of drive the point home, let's consider the competition, the other science fiction shows that had successful TV runs of any significance in the modern age. I'm not going to go way, way back. That stuff's like in a different class. And I'm really only going to go and talk about shows that went all in with the sci-fi. Not the ones that are light on the sci-fi, because there's plenty of those. A couple of the better ones in that category would be The $6 Million Man and Quantum Leap, the original. They have merits, but they're not in the same category as Battlestar Galactica. So, what competition are we talking about? Well, we start with Star Trek, the original series. A 5-year mission that only lasted for 3 seasons before cancellation. And man, that last season was bad. Suffering from some budget cuts, some time pressures, things that ended up making some of those episodes brutally painful to watch. Spock's Brain, anyone? Remember that one? Running from 1966 to 1969, the show was groundbreaking in numerous ways It took on significant cultural and social themes, and it featured some things that had never been seen before. For instance, the first on screen kiss between a white man and a black woman. It was ahead of its time in many of the statements it was trying to make, but it also leaned heavily into humor for many of its episodes, and the corny element runs strong through Star Trek. Honestly, the special effects, they're not very good. They were a product of the time they were set in, but sheesh, some of them, ooh. Hey, everybody, tip to the left. Nevertheless, I do love the original series. I've got all of those on disc. From 1979 to 1981, we got to enjoy Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. This is another show I watched on TV each week during its original run, and I loved the show as a kid. But it's heavy on corniness and comedy. It was actually produced by the same company that brought us the original Battlestar Galactica, and it has some definite similarities in feel. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Doctor Who, brought to us by the British Broadcasting Company, running from 1963 to 1989. That's a very impressive run. And then restarting in 2005 as a continuation of the original series. And it's still running, it's still on the air. There have been just a ton of storylines involved over the years, with progressively improving special effects. But there is again an element of camp built into Doctor Who. It's built in by nature, it's very intentional, it's part of what the fandom loves. Nothing against it. The show excels in its lane, but that's definitely a different lane than Battlestar Galactica. In 1987, science fiction on television took a major step forward with Star Trek: The Next Generation, enjoying a 7-year run through 1994 and then moving on to a number of successful motion pictures. Built on the foundation of the original series, this was Star Trek all grown up. From the writing to the acting to the special effects. I mean, just look at the difference in how Klingons appear now. Whew. The show takes on some serious themes with some of its episodes and brings lots of action and tension through many of the story arcs. But still flowing true from the original series, this is a show that also aims to deliver on humor. And it does this consistently in many well-designed ways throughout its run. No longer campy, the humor is more mature, but it still chooses not to take itself too seriously much of the time. In this way, it doesn't match the level of quality science fiction Battlestar Galactica delivers. And the same holds true for all of the additional Star Trek shows that have come and are still coming, from Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, admittedly a weaker entry, Discovery, Picard, great show, Strange New Worlds, and even the various animated Trek series. Star Trek has lasting power and has impacted the culture way more than Battlestar Galactica, so I'll give it that. But just as science fiction on television, Battlestar Galactica pulls it off better. While Star Trek continues to give us content seemingly year after year, there have been some other great shows along the way over these gap of years. Again, I'll say each of them isn't quite what Battlestar Galactica reaches, attains, and gives to us. Let's start out with 1994's Babylon 5, 5-season run. This is a show that moved in the direction of what we'd eventually get in Battlestar Galactica, taking on some serious content and tough themes. It also follows a really well-defined story arc all through its 5 seasons. Where it doesn't stand up is its production value, definitely a bit on the cheaper side, and it's a little bit quirky at times. 1993 brought us SeaQuest DSV, where the unknown expanse of space is substituted by the unplumbed mysteries of the ocean depths here on our planet. The first season was honestly fascinating. Seasons 2 and 3 took, pardon the pun, a nosedive. But particularly in the first season, the science fiction elements were strong, were true to science in some really interesting ways, and the overall of the tone of the show was pretty realistic. It just didn't sustain. 1993 also brought us something completely different, a drama mystery that predominantly leaned into science fiction but tossed in healthy doses of the supernatural and even horror, and we ate it up as it originally ran for 9 solid seasons and then came out with 2 more seasons after a 14-year gap. Yes, I'm talking about the X-Files. Come on, you're hearing the theme song there. I'm not going to play it. I don't want a copyright strike, but you hear it. This is a completely different type of science fiction on television. Much more low key, focused on the suspense and mystery of the story, both in many of the individual episodes as well as the greater mysteries that run throughout the series run. It's really not in the same category as Battlestar Galactica, which is good, as this could have given it a run for its money. But its focus on 2 primary characters, Mulder and Scully, and its extremely episodic nature really made it quite a different type of television show, one I thoroughly enjoy, but not the same. Doesn't surpass Battlestar Galactica for science fiction on TV. 1997 gives us another robust series, one of my favorites, the sci-fi TV franchise Stargate, which starts with Stargate SG-1, then adds the excellent Stargate Atlantis, and then finally tries to give us a little bit more with Stargate Universe. I absolutely love this series, and I own the entire primary collection on DVD. That was something we used to collect after VHS tapes and before streaming video was everywhere. We got 10 seasons out of the flagship franchise, 5 seasons from Stargate Atlantis and Jason Momoa. Thank you. And 2 seasons from Stargate Universe, which sadly lacked the charm and the quality cast of the other 2 shows. There are some great stories told here, and it shares some militaristic science fiction elements with Battlestar Galactica, but it never takes itself nearly as seriously. The stakes, while quite high at times, just don't feel the same, and the humor, more intense and prevalent, which is part of what fans love about Stargate. It's a brilliant show. I thoroughly enjoy it, but its style is significantly different from Battlestar Galactica. It's lighter, and it stayed with more of a niche fandom rather than truly breaking into the mainstream like Battlestar Galactica did. This is most highlighted by the fact that the latter seasons of Stargate SG-1 went head-to-head with Battlestar Galactica's 4-year run, and that was even critiqued as the anti-Galactica because of its more hopeful and optimistically lighter tone, but viewers and critics sided consistently with the quality of Battlestar Galactica. It whooped Stargate. Sorry, it just did. But I still love it. As Battlestar Galactica stepped away from its run, a new science fiction show was just stepping up into the spotlight. Fringe, running for 5 seasons starting in 2008. I loved Fringe, focusing initially on a division of the FBI investigating cases that may tie into fringe science, a real thing. The show functions like a procedural police drama in many ways, as it goes about these investigations. And it has a lot of mystery and suspense built into the overall story. Unfortunately, the show gets wackier as it goes. Farther into the fringe, I guess. The final season is barely recognizable when compared with season 1 of the run. But I still loved the show. It was very well done. It took itself fairly serious throughout. So tonally, it shares some commonalities with Battlestar Galactica. But the writing and plot loses cohesion much more quickly and more severely than that accused of Battlestar Galactica in the last season or so. Some of you will want me to give a shout out to Firefly, the Joss Whedon space western production that has built nearly a cult classic following, with such fan support that it spawned a movie, Serenity. Regardless of how good the show may have been, it only got 1 season. 14 episodes, and it was yanked after just the ninth of them showed. You can still go find them all now, but it only got 9 on the screen. Sorry, it's just not in the same class as Battlestar Galactica. Bring on the hate. In 2014, the CW made a serious entry into the realm of TV science fiction with the excellent sci-fi drama, The 100. What a phenomenal premise for a show, with grit, tension, massive stakes, and an impressively performing cast, both young people and older actors. Unfortunately, did I mention it was on the CW? While I watched the entire 7-season run, the show has the challenge of leaning too much into its angsty teenage drama element, as the CW tends to be. Now, it's based on a young adult science fiction series, so it really was just trying to stay true to that focus. I found the show to be really well done, well produced, well designed, great effects. And in many ways, it is comparable in tone, in tension to many of the story elements of Battlestar Galactica. But it's just too YA to fully compete. Still, honestly, it's in the ballpark. Good job, The 100. The final show that could have knocked Battlestar Galactica off its perch as king of TV science fiction is The Expanse, which ran for 6 seasons starting in 2015. It has, first of all, fantastic source material. The Expanse series, written by James S. A. Corey, and the adaptation holds true to the tone, most of the characters, and the overall story that needed to be told. The show is extremely similar to Battlestar Galactica in its scope, what it tries to accomplish, the stakes involved, its grittiness, and its exceptional production value. I mean, the special effects slap. Is that how the young people say it? Where it just falls short, however, is the failure to tell the whole freaking story. Amazon chose to have the series end after the adaptation of book 6 out of a 9-book series. While it's a fine ending for a TV show, they actually do that decently. It needs the conclusion. The final 3 books of The Expanse bring it all home in some brilliant ways. There are things dropped throughout the first 6 books that don't pay off until the last 3, and some of those hints and plot hooks are in the TV show and then unfulfilled. If they had filmed the final 3 books, 2 or 3 more seasons, I have little to no doubt The Expanse would be sitting on top of the heap, but they didn't. If they come back in a few more years, maybe, and do the last 3 books at the same level of quality as the rest of the show, we may have a new winner. But until then, we just have a close runner-up. Thanks for playing. Okay, there you have it. I have fanboyed over Battlestar Galactica, but I've also given my logical rationales for my opinion. I've also taken a quick tour of its major competition in television's science fiction series, and I love all those competitors, but Battlestar Galactica, it just brought something special to the screen that I still think has not been surpassed. And they did it in just 4 powerful seasons. It's pretty awesome. You think I'm right? You think I'm wrong? Tell me either way. Put your thoughts in the comment box for this video. I will respond. And don't forget to like this video, please. Let YouTube know it's getting attention, and it'll spread it out further, and we'll continue and expand the conversation. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.